Hey guys, so I've recently had a bunch of people comment under my SMEG Mixer animation asking how I made it. I think mostly in regards to the different parts and the camera animation. So today we're just going to have a look at that scene. I'll try to remove the animation completely and show you how I went about animating it, just so you get somewhat of an idea of how it's done. So let's dive into this. Okay, so if we have a look at the scene first, you can see that I've got a bunch of cameras set up and I'm using markers to switch between these cameras. So if I go into the camera view, you can see that here at frame, frame 383, it switches between these different cameras. And that's how I was able to render the entire animation without having multiple scenes set up. You could have easily done that. But in this case, I did everything in a single scene. All right, so what we're going to do is just select everything in the scene. We're going to make sure that it's completely built together. So we're going to start right at the end, and then we're just going to delete all of the animations in the entire scene. And with that done, what we're going to do is remove some of the scene. You can see there's tons of these cameras. We are going to hide them. All right, so now we've only got the mixer left. So a very crucial thing to set up before you start animating is the whole parenting system, okay? So what I've got here is we've got the front part of the mixer. I've got an empty, and we were able to move that, and you can see we've got the mixing blade at the front, these bits and bobs all connected to that so that it moves as one unit. Now the reason that that's important is because I want this thing to assemble into these sub-assemblies and then have those sub-assemblies move into one another as well. So that's how I was able to have the motor build itself together and then have that motor move into the chassis. So to do that, what we're going to do is first of all move this whole upper section upwards. So what we're going to do is select the hierarchy of that head controller. So select hierarchy, and then we're just going to set a keyframe in the rotation and location. And what we're going to do now is just move this bit up. Let's just do it all the way up here. So we're going to have it combine up here. Then we're going to take the front of the mixer. So if we move it, basically what we're going to do is just, once it's combined, we're going to start with a combined mixer, and we're just going to take it apart, and then moving forward in the timeline. So we're basically reverse animating it. So then when we get to frame 1, it's completely disassembled, and then when we play it, it'll then assemble itself. So that's basically how we go about this. So now we've already got this, right? Going down and down. All right, then we're going to do the same with the rear part of the mixer. That's all one piece as well, okay. So then we're going to move it backwards. There we go. Keyframe, keyframe. And now when we play it, boom, right? Now this is all running a bit too fast. So obviously what you would do is just move these bits further apart. In this case, I'd probably want to move it forward. And we can move that forward, and then it animate slower. There we go. So now the next bit would be to animate the motor itself. All right, so for the motor, we're basically going to do the same. We're just going to take these parts, start on frame, let's say 240, location, rotation, move that out. Make sure that on 260, for example, we're back to where we want to be. So I'm just going to go through and set keyframes for all of these objects for when it's built itself together. So ultimately, we're just going to go forward to like frame 200. And then set another keyframe, move it forward, maybe add some rotation as well on the... Here we go. And then animate, and then boom. Right. And we're just going to do that for all the other parts as well. Now, when you animate this, you want to make sure that these parts animate properly so that they don't intersect. So, for example, if we were to move this here, set a keyframe. Actually, we need to set the originals. There we go. So if we were to move this disc up front here, and then we've got this part intersecting through it, right, that shouldn't happen. So we need to make sure that these parts, once we've disassembled it, that it animates correctly. So we want to make sure that this is in front of the disc and not behind it, because if we were to put it behind it and we then animate it, you can see that this disc is now animating through it, which shouldn't happen, right? But yeah, that's pretty much how I did it. So next, what we can do is have a quick look at animating the cameras. I think one of the more interesting shots is the opening shot where I have this camera shake with a zoom in it. So let's just add a camera. What I like to do is actually look through the camera. So view, camera set active, view, camera to viewport. Okay, then we are going to zoom onto this. So we're going to use a very tight focal length of, I don't know, 150 maybe. Zoom in here. Okay, so now we've got this scene animating with these few keyframes. So what we're going to do is just take our camera. We are going to animate the rotation, location, and also the focal length. So let's actually zoom in at 250. Then what we're also going to do is animate the position. And we can also maybe rotate the camera a bit, just so we get a bit of a sway in there. So that's that. It's not quite fast enough for my liking. I want to speed this up a bit. There we go. Not quite happy with this, with the center framing of this, so just move it somewhat there. Okay. And then we're going to zoom out again. So before we had 150, then we went to 255. Let's just go out to like, I don't know, 75 now. Okay, that's a bit extreme. Let's go 130 maybe. And then we'll go into 180. So that will give us, okay, so zoom in, zoom out, and then only a bit further. So actually let's go back to 160 instead. So it's like a ping pong, in, out, and it always gets less of a difference. There we go. Now I want to slow down the final zoom. And what we're also going to do is smooth out this final one as well, just by increasing the length of that arm. It's going to smooth it out even further. There we go. So it's got a nice slow in. Ease, I think it's called, easing it out. All right, then for these other frames, we're going to change the movement as well. So I don't know, just some slight movement. And then for this final one, we can actually change the rotation back. Something like that. Okay, so there's a bit too much back and forth on the rotation for me. So what we're going to do is try to keep this centered at all times. Try that. Okay, so in this shot, we need to move that a bit further down. There we go. So something like that, right? And that's pretty much all that I did for the other shots as well. Then I zoomed in onto specific parts while it was closing. So, for example, here. Right, set up another camera over here. Let's just do that camera. Look through that one. And then I used, I think, another pretty close-up shot. And then while it was closing, right, like these few frames. Let's just move the mixer head down movement further back. There we go. And then we can slow down this animation here. There we go. Move that back a bit. Lengthen that. And what this is going to do is make sure that it just comes down to a halt really slowly at the end, and then finally just touches. Let's do the same with this part. Bring these back a bit so that they touch at the same time. And then slow this down. Pretty extreme. Boom. Even more extreme. And even more extreme here as well. There we go. Something like that. Maybe even slower. That should do the trick. Okay. And yeah, then it just comes down. I think I used a different camera for that as well. And yeah, so to swap between these cameras, I used markers, right? So let's have a quick look at that. So let's say there we go, for shot frame 290, I want to switch to this camera, so camera, in this case 12. What we can do is go to marker, add marker, and then we can marker, bind camera to markers. Then let's do camera 11 in this case. View, let's have a quick look through that one. There we go. And then camera 11, we're going to add another marker. And then bind camera. And you can see that stays in that camera, and then boom. When we hit frame 290, it switches to camera 12. And there we go. So I hope that this helped you, yeah, in any way, regards to animation, scene setup. So if you have any questions, feel free to put those down in the comments below. I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. And I hope you have a great day. Take care.